Hello there, welcome back to Jennie Designs with Paper. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. I'm working on a quick card, so get comfy and let's get crafty. This is a color combination I found when I looked for summer color palettes. I love the corals, the blues, and the greens, and I just happened to get a delivery. I purchased the Concord and 9th mini cube ink pad set, and it has many of those colors in it. So I'm going to use it in this Concord and 9th stamp set. It's called In Bloom. It has the stencils, coordinating stencils, as well as the die. I will not be using the die today. I have selected a few of the colors from this color palette. I know the yellow is missing. I will get that toward the end. But the first thing I need to do is stamp my image. I have a piece of Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock I've put into my Misty stamp positioner. I will be using the Concord and 9th Intense Black ink to stamp this image before I start color blending with the coordinating stencils. This stamp image is quite large, so instead of just picking a quarter sheet of cardstock, I have half a piece here. I have used this stamp before, and for some reason the ink I used to stamp it with stained my stamp. And I think I just used like a regular assignment says stamping, so I'm not sure why it's stained, but it doesn't have any effect on its ability to stamp cleanly. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this up with the lid to my Misty. I'm going to reposition my paper in case I need to restamp it, and then I'm going to ink up the stamp with this. This is a hybrid black ink. And I'm going to kind of peel that little lid off there, and it is a juicy stamp ink pad. Oh my heavens, I got ink lots of places other than the stamp, but it's okay. I'm going to go ahead and continue to ink up this stamp. It does take a minute to get ink over it. It is a large stamp. One thing I haven't done yet with this stamp is color it with Copic markers, and I think that's going to be my the next time I pull this out is going to be to color it with Copics, because there's lots of dimension possibility in this stamp. Now that I've got it all inked up, I'm going to go ahead and close my Misty lid and my ink pad and just stamp that down on the cardstock. I'm not putting a ton of pressure. I don't want to blow out any of those stamp lines. Going over it with my hand. Just pulling in like this is a dry baby wipe, or mostly dry baby wipe, so that my fingers glide over the lid to my Misty to make sure I get all of the details. I did not re-ink the stamp, but I did a couple of times have to go down and add some extra pressure. And this is the stamped image all ready to ink blend with the coordinating stencils. Now, there's a lot you can do with these stencils, and I'm not going to be using the mask that covers up the floral arrangement. I'm just going to use the stencils that stencil the image. Now, the flowers only have one layer. There's only one. The stencil only does one layer of color. So I'm going to tape the stencil in place. I have it on my grip mat. This is the non-slip grip mat, so that my paper won't slide around while I'm ink blending with the blending brushes. But like I was saying, this stamp and stencil set is not meant to give you that detailed stencil look or detailed color look that some of the other stencils do. It has a couple of fun other stencils in this set. So I got it all taped down to my cardstock. I pulled out the coral combination. I have a dark, a medium, and a light. I am going to try to get some definition, some dimension. I pulled out a small blending brush. It's brand new, never been used before. I'm going to ink it up with the lightest color first. And I'm going to start ink blending those larger blooms. And as soon as, like literally as soon as the ink touched the panel, all I got was a black ink blob. Total panic mode. I put my brush down. I picked up my heat tool. I tried to heat set the ink to see if that would stop it from smearing. I put the stencil back on and tried to ink blend it again. I cleaned off my blending brush, and then I pulled that light ink out again and tried to add more ink, and it's still just smearing the black ink. So off camera, I put it into my Misty, and I stamped it in just a different ink, Simon Says Stamp, regular ink, not a hybrid ink. And I tried to blend it, and it's still smeared. So you just saw me pull out my heat tool and try and dry that ink. And at this point, I'm like, I don't even know. Is it the kind of coral color ink that's smearing the black ink? Is the black ink? Is it the paper? What is going on? Anyway, once I heat set the Simon Says Stamp ink, it did stop smearing, and I was able to finish ink blending the image. I only stamped it one time because I was afraid of that smearing, so I left the stamp in my Misty so that I could go back and do it again. So now that I have the lightest color down on all of the larger blooms, I'm going back with the mid-tone coral color and adding some of that medium color to the second layer of leaves. And then with just the very tip of my brush, I'm adding some of that darkest coral to the very center of the flowers. And then I didn't love that as much, so I pulled the mid-tone out and kind of added some shadows underneath those top petals, and just kind of went back and forth until I was mostly satisfied with it. And then I took the lightest color and ink blended the entire image again, kind of went over everything. It felt like it was a little bit too pale at that point. So now I'm going to work on those smaller blooms, and this is where I'm pulling in the blue from that color palette that I showed you at the beginning. So I've got a small ink blending brush, and I'm using that light blue. It's actually a mid-tone blue for that family, the 4-color family. And I'm just putting a little bit of color on the flowers. I'm not worrying a whole bunch about detail on these flowers. They're smaller. So now I've pulled in the second stencil. It does the greenery, and I've got it all lined up with a stamped image. And I'm going to use a little bit of washi tape to hold it in place, just to make sure that it doesn't slip around on my cardstock. And once I have that all taped down, I'm going to pull in the green color from that color palette. So I've got the light green ink here. It's kind of a sea foamy color. I'll try to remember to put the colors I used down in the description box. And I have another small blending brush. This is a new set. And I'm going to ink blend all of the leaves and the stems of the flowers. And I'm doing a quick blending first to get color on all of the leaves and the stems. And then I will go back with the tip of the blending brush and add some more ink, and darker ink, same color, but add more so that it's darker toward the bottoms of the leaves and the stems. This stencil set also includes a background stencil. So it has a masked area that covers the flower bouquet or the flower stem and allows you to put some stripes in the background of the image. And I debated whether or not I wanted to use that or the dies, but I decided this was a good place to add some more of that blue. So I've pulled out that blue blending brush and the blue ink pad again. I'm just making sure it's clear. This is actually a lighter color blue, but it's in the same blue family. And I'm just going to ink blend all of the openings on that stencil so that I get some light blue stripes behind my floral design. I do have a little bit of repositionable, there we go, words are hard, adhesive on the back of my stencil to keep the masked area down and to keep those striped pieces from sliding and having the blending brush go underneath them. So I am able to just add that ink on. I probably for this part should have grabbed a larger blending brush instead of trying to use the small one, but I didn't. I had planned in my mind to use the little blending brushes, so that's what I had going on. But anyways, eventually I finally did get all of the ink blended onto the background of that stamp flower, or the flower stamp. And I've put it back into my Misty stamp positioner, and I am re-inking the stamp with that Concord and 9th black ink because it was super, super juicy, and I wanted to get a nice, crisp black line on my image. So once I have the stamp inked up, I'm going to go ahead and close the lid of my Misty. I'm going to run my hands over the lid. I'm going to use that dry baby wipe so that my fingers will go smoothly across the lid to the Misty, the lid, the door, whatever you call it. And I'm just going to make sure that I get all of the lines stamped back down. And I did spend a little bit of time. I opened and closed the Misty a couple of times to make sure all of the details were in place. And I think I finally got it stamped nice and clear. I'm going to pop open that Misty, and you can see how much nicer the stamp lines are. I did off-camera heat set that again because I decided I needed more dimension. So I've pulled out my colored pencil case, and I'm going to grab 2 Prismacolor pencils that are in that same coral family. And I'm going to add a little bit of shadow and dimension to the flower petals. So I'm taking the lighter of the 2 pencils I pulled out and adding some color to the second layer of petals in those flowers. And then I'm going to take the darker one and put some shadows in and also add some more color to the centers of the flowers. And once I have finished with that added dimension, I can go ahead and prep this panel for a card. So I've pulled out my waffle flower stamps, A2 layer dies, and I'm using the second to the largest. I'm picking it up with my tweezers. And I want the flower to look like the lines are straight horizontally. So I'm going to have to turn the paper a little bit diagonally into my die. And truthfully, I was not paying very good attention to the bottom left-hand corner, and it did get trimmed off just a tiny, tiny bit. But the ink that I did the stripes with and the blue for my cardstock are so closely the same color that you can't even tell on the finished card, which is funny because I do not have any of the Concord 9 cardstock yet. This is just a light blue from my stash, and it's pretty close. It's pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and score my card base here. I have a top folding US A2 size card, which means it is 4 1/4 inches wide by 5 1/2 inches tall. And my panel is just slightly smaller than that. And I'm going to adhere that down eventually, but I need a sentiment. So this is the Concord and 9th stamp set. It is called, let me find it on my desk. It is called Mix and Match Everyday Sentiments, and it is a solid stamp with a coordinating die that stamps all of these words and then cuts them out so you can create your own sentiment. I have stamped this previously, like for another project, and I have used about half of the words. And so I'm down to not really complete sentences. I'm going to have to stamp that again to get more words, but I am going to use the words just because. And you can see the back of that panel is where I stamped it in that Concord 9th black ink, and it just smeared. But that's why paper has 2 sides, so we can use them both. All right, now that I have the panel taped down with double-sided adhesive, I'm going to pop up my sentiment with a little bit of foam tape. This is my 3M foam tape roll that is, when you first get it, as big as your head. I'm down to about the last third of it, and I'm going to use my reverse tweezers to put my sentiment on, and I'm using my sentiment boxes to kind of cover up the worst of that black smearing. And here is the yellow. So I have in my stash these very old Stampin' Up! Enamel dots. I don't think they're enamel. I don't know what they're made out of, but these little dots. And I'm putting yellow on the blue flowers. And I happen to have some coral ones that match that darkest coral. So I'm putting those coral ones in the center of my flowers. And I'm going to add that insert to my card, a piece of white copy paper that is slightly smaller than the card front itself, so that there is a place to write a message. And my card is finished. The stencils and stamp sets that They make cards such a breeze. I hope you enjoyed the video today. I have a couple other videos here I think you will like. I've also added a subscribe button. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you did. Leave me a thumbs up, let YouTube know you liked the video. Leave me a comment down below, tell me what you think, and I hope you have a really fabulous, fabulous day.